Let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
If we have the combination of a $1 trillion increase in economic output and a $1 trillion decrease in the budget deficit, then the outcome should be that there is no inflation or very little inflation.
Let's see. Doge fantasy versus reality. What they are doing is saving the economy. What we are being told in most corners is they're burning it down. We bring you their mission and their achievements in their own words.
Number 2.
What has happened here is that Putin, he doesn't feel, is negotiating on actual terms. He keeps delaying. And what President Trump has said right now is if he continues to play games, he's going to get tough on Russia just like he did in 2017.
Told you, Vladimir Putin has become irrational, and Trump blasted him in his quest to bring a ceasefire to the fighting in Ukraine. If Putin doesn't sober up, Trump is prepared to slap sanctions that will sting and more.
Number 1.
There's new anxiety over tariffs. That's the problem here. Peter Navarro tells Fox that tariffs will be announced Wednesday could bring in $6 trillion in 10 years. Now, that is a form of tax. How much of it will be paid by consumers, we don't know, but it's a question that's really upsetting Wall Street.
It is. Liberation Day is Wednesday, but tariff affects the market right now. President Trump's effort to bring manufacturing back to America and rebalance trade is causing stocks to rocking the market. We're going to look at the short and long-term effects. Michael Goodwin joins us now. Michael, right now, it looks like we're down a few hundred points. We got killed on about 700 points on this tariff. Trump is convinced long-term it's going to be a boon to America and recalibrate the economy. Have you been sold yet?
Well, good morning, Brian. No, I tend to believe that the people on Wall Street are much smarter than I am about these things. And when I looked on Friday, I think the S&P was down something like 5% for the year. The NASDAQ tech-heavy down more than double that, over 10%. So that's a lot of money for people who, in their 401ks or their Roth IRAs. Everyone's getting hammered because most people simply invest in the indexes, and the indexes are down significantly. So I think the president is banking on the idea that people trust that this is why he was elected.
Yep.
That people trust his economic instincts. But, that only goes so far. I mean, at some point, the proof is in the pudding, as they say, and he's going to have to, I think, produce results, and that includes on Wall Street.
Here's Kevin Hassett, his economics advisor, cut 2.
Well, President Trump is going to decide how many countries. The point about 15 countries is that we have massive, massive trade deficits with about 15 countries. It doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of other unfair trade practices around the world. And so the reciprocal part of our trade actions will be visible to everybody on the 2nd. The thing I can say is if you look at what we've already accomplished, I don't think there's ever been a trade team that's more united in accomplishing the president's goals. If you think about it, there have been action after action after action. And you mentioned the auto tariffs. Since they're in the past, it's easier for me to talk about. The auto tariffs come from a backstory that I think is really interesting, Maria, that has really haunted all of us who study the U.S. economy.
So right now on the economy, according to CBS, he's getting 44% approval on inflation, 56% disapproval. On the economy, 48-52. He's usually much inverse on that. When asked about tariffs, not enough, people say. Only 7% thinks he's not doing enough on tariffs. Right amount, only 31% says he's doing the right amount. Too much, 55%. So far, it's been all rocking the economy in anticipation of what it'll do. But his overall objective, Michael, is to bring manufacturing back and to give America control of their own economy again. And do you think it's possible? That's a question that only time will tell, I think.
Well, look, I mean, he has had some successes with investment in America from companies that could have invested elsewhere. And I think he would argue, as would Kevin Hassett, that the reason they are investing here rather than Asia or Europe is to avoid the tariffs. That, look, everybody wants access to American consumers because American consumers are not only numerous, they are the wealthiest in the world by and large. And so to get access to the American market, these companies would rather be based here, have their manufacturing here, as many of the automakers discovered years and years ago. It was better to build Mercedes in Alabama than it was to build them in Germany and ship them to Alabama. And I think the president is banking on that. And there's some reason why that is an important part of this. But the other part of it that is that inflation or a tariff can cause inflation because the product simply costs more now, and somebody's got to pay that. And if there's enough of that in the society, then you've got the inflation problem again. So I don't think the president has as much time as he thinks he does on this. The public trust, by and large, trusted him more than the Democrats on the economy, but that trust can easily evaporate if something goes wrong here. So if I were him, I wouldn't be so patient.
I understand. You know what I think is going to happen? Massive rebalancing with somewhat friendly countries like Canada, India, Mexico, Brazil, who can be friendly when they want to be. So I think there's going to be people, okay, let me address that. And I think you're going to see a reconfiguring. But what the president's doing is what Joe Biden said he was going to do. He was going to bring pharmaceuticals back to America. That wasn't going to happen. Remember, after PPE, we didn't make any. We're using plastic bags. So that's one of his goals, too. So we'll see what happens. I know a lot of the unions appreciate it, but I want to talk about what you wrote about over the weekend. Katrina Armstrong resigns as Colombia's interim president after she cuts the deal on last Friday, saying she'll agree to all 9 of the Trump administration's demands to change Colombia. And on Saturday, she gets on a conference call and basically said, don't worry about what I said. Now, Claire Shipman, the ex-anchor, takes over. But this weekend, Colombia actually had Alumni Day, and they took that time, many of them, to burn their diplomas because of the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, who's got solid ties to Hamas. What are they thinking?
Well, Brian, I think we could ask that question of so many colleges around the country. Tufts had a woman who was arrested. You've seen them popping up everywhere. Harvard just ended 2 departments or removed the people in charge of 2 departments about Middle East faculty. So this is happening everywhere. And I think what's so surprising about it is that Joe Biden did nothing about it, right? So you had all of these demonstrations last year, all of these anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, give me a break, it's pro-Hamas. I mean, this is the media. The New York Times had a story yesterday in which it said that some people believe that the chant to the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that chant talks about the elimination of Israel. It's not some people. That's the entire purpose of the chant, is to eliminate Israel, to picture a Mideast without an Israeli state. And so this notion that somehow these people are just engaging in First Amendment rights, that they're just leading to discussions, baloney. They were doing these takeovers of these schools. They were disrupting. They were threatening. And so if you're an Israeli, imagine you're walking by, or even just an American Jewish student, you're walking by a protest and they're saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That means the end of Israel. And if it isn't the job of the university administrators to protect those students from the harassment and the intimidation and the hate speech that is, then what is the job of a university administrator? And they have all failed. Columbia has failed. Harvard has failed. Penn has failed. Tufts. You go up and down the line. Virtually every elite college has failed in this regard. And I think the president is hitting back with the only power he has. They're going to investigate the schools, but
I love it.
They clean up their act.
Absolutely. But I don't know if you saw my show on Sunday night. And the thing is, it's not speculation anymore. We know that in the tunnels, by being held hostage, a specific hostage came out and said, they told me exactly, they have direct links to this Palestine will be free, these organizations in America, and we're bragging about winning the PR war. Mark Goldfeder is representing 8 Hamas hostage families. Cut 59.
Students for Justice in Palestine and Within Our Lifetime, which are two of the groups that we just sued in the Southern District of New York. Here, by the way, is a thank you letter they got afterwards from the PFLP, another Hamas-affiliated terrorist organization, thanking them for their service to Hamas. And the beautiful part is when you hire these useful idiots to be your PR agents on American campuses, what you get are useful idiots who make useful idiot mistakes. So, for example, here is an actual recruitment flyer for Hamas that they handed out on campus, and it reads, "This is an intentional and coordinated effort to uphold the principles of Hamas, the PFLP, and the Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigade."
Where did that appear?
September 24th, 2024, on Columbia's campus, handed it out by the CUAD, the group that Mahmoud Khalil represents.
Please, come on. This is what Marco Rubio just got to present. Done, finished, through. Anybody with this guy's got to go. That's Khalil. These groups, since when are we allowing Hamas to have a say in what happens on our college campuses? Is this crazy?
And you know, Brian, that gets to the heart of America's interest here. We have labeled these groups terrorist organizations. With that comes certain penalties. And those penalties can be applied to the individuals espousing that ideology, representing those, and spreading the tenets of those organizations. That's what Donald Trump is forcing the colleges to do. And they deserve to be penalized if they won't do it.
You think it's, Michael, he's doing everything at once. It's overwhelming, like to prepare for a show, because he's handling the primary schools with decentralizing. Okay, got it. And then on the most high class, expensive schools in the country, we are going to have zero tolerance to the anti-Semitic behavior at once. And it's going to cost you $400 million to straighten out. Hey, University of Pennsylvania, you're allowing trans men to compete in sports. We're taking back $175 million. I mean, usually this is one of these stories a year. And then you start scooping up 300 anti-American, ungrateful college students, and put them on the launch pad to be deported. That's massive action. That's a message.
Absolutely. And look, I agree with you, Brian. It's hard to keep up even, right? Even for journalists, it's very hard to keep pace with this president and all of these orders. And I think he's paying something of a price for that. I think there is a sense of overwhelmingness in terms of the system can't process all of these ideas. Nonetheless, they are all essential. This is big time stuff. The whole thing with Doge, you know, I wrote about this too, that you cannot make this argument about what Doge is doing if you forget that of our $7 trillion budget, approximately $2 trillion of it is borrowed. And so there, when you want to give money away, whether it's to transgender folk shows in Ecuador or whatever it is, you've got to balance it against the fact that 30% or more of that money is borrowed.
Yes.
And so that's what's infuriating, that so much of the government has just taken it for granted. The money will always be there. We'll just borrow more when we run out. We've run out of room to live that way. And that's why I think it's so important what the president is doing. But unfortunately, the argument is being consumed by just these headlines about this and that and every other thing. It's quite a remarkable achievement what he's doing, but he's not going to get enough credit for it because one thing overshadows another.
Maybe. If people go to Fox Nation, we are the #1 network. It's a streaming service that we have that everyone knows about. It has Brett Baer's it's an hour long. He meets with 7 members of Doge, and Musk is in the middle. And they all talk separately about what they're doing to straighten out the government. They're not saying people are bad. In fact, they say nice things about the career service members who are welcoming Doge. Help me get a voice here. Help me fix this job. We matter suddenly. It's not an abyss.
Yeah,
so, go ahead.
One of the things I think that people will come away from that is just the chaos in the federal government, the fact that computer systems don't talk to each other. So one agency has 27 chief information officers.
Yeah.
Just to make sense of all
HHS.
The computer systems. I mean, it's crazy. It's just crazy.
Well, Michael, can continue writing. Stay on top of the the Columbia thing because as you write, we know we're going to get a new president of Columbia very shortly because she's not. Claire Shipman, who hates Trump, who's way to the left, is not going to last either. Michael, thank you. So with us right now is Senator Dave McCormick. Now, normally it's always great to have him on, but especially today because you have a brand new book out tomorrow officially, but you can get it now. Who Believed in You? How Purposeful Mentorship Changes the World. Congratulations, Senator.
Hey, Brian. Good to be with you.
So you had this book going before
it's been
the
written
pandemic,
for a couple
right?
years. Yeah, well, it started during the pandemic. You know, we were locked up with our 6 daughters, and they couldn't see their teachers or their coaches. And we started to think about, their relationships were strained. We started to think about, Dina and I, how mentorship had changed our lives and that they had a real gap. And we started to talk to some of our friends about it, successful folks. And across the board, all of them had been benefited by a mentor or two that had helped them become who they are, whether it's Sarah Huckabee Sanders or Satya Nadella or Steve Schwartzman or, Brian Grazer, the Oscar-winning producer. And so we said, let's do this project where we talk to people, and it ultimately became a book. And so the book is about mentorship, and it's about not the people you've ever heard of. It's not about the famous people. It's about the people who help them become who they are. And the key thing here is who believed in you.
Right.
Have you gone to the people who believed in you, Brian, and said thank you? Because the people we interviewed said, man, we wish we would have done that. And then what are you doing to pay it forward? Because all of us can make a huge difference if we help young people become their best selves and they change the world.
Right. And for you, a lot with sports. You're a great athlete. You played football. You wrestled all the way through college. You went to West Point. After serving in the military, you became very successful in business, and then said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to try this political thing." Almost, you and Dr. Oz went down to a death march in the primary, and then you had this huge win over a longtime sitting Senator Casey in Pennsylvania. So the sitting senator, you've just been doing this for 2 months now.
Right.
So the person who you cite is a football coach.
Yeah, a football coach. I was riding the bench. I was a sophomore in high school, and the coach got fired, and a new coach came in, and he watched all the films. And he came to me the summer before my junior year and said, I think you got real potential here. You're going to have to earn it. So I go into the football training camp. At the end of the camp, he makes me the co-captain as a junior. Wouldn't have ever imagined it. I ended up having a great season, another great season. I become an all-state football player. I get recruited to West Point. I ultimately wrestled at West Point, not football, but I got recruited. It changed my life. I'm not kidding you, Brian. I never thought of myself as that guy. I never thought I was the captain of the team. I didn't think I was that good. He saw something in me I didn't see in myself, and it literally changed the course of my life. And there's been a couple people like that.
Right. And so how many people do you interview in your book?
We interviewed we about 25 key people in our book. So people in political life, people in business, people that were actors. I mean, it's our Hollywood producers. David Chang, the famous chef, and the stories are incredible. And may I share one or two just to give you an example? A great example is Satya Nadella. So he's the CEO of Microsoft. I think arguably the most successful CEO in the world right now. And he tells a story about he grew up in India and had a cricket coach that really helped him find himself. But he joined Microsoft eventually as a software developer, was sort of promoted to mid-level management. And this guy, Microsoft buys this software company called Great Plains Software. And the guy who started it becomes Satya's boss and runs all the software businesses at Microsoft. And sees his promise in Satya, mentors him, helps him gets to know his parents, really becomes his person. And that guy's name was Doug Burgum, who went on to become the governor and now President Trump's Secretary of Energy. And when they were looking for a CEO for Microsoft, Satya was not sort of in the group that was most likely. He was a consideration. They called Doug Burgum and said, well, what do you think of Satya? He said, he's incredible. He's the guy to lead Microsoft into the future. And, of course, that's what's happened. So these relationships come and go, and it makes all the difference in the world. The other thing we saw is mentors, they have trusting relationships. They have common values. They have commitment to one another. But the thing they do that is absolutely necessary, they help you have the confidence to overcome failure. They help you have the confidence to take risk. Everybody in this book, they're all these super successful people. They've all failed. We've all failed. I failed. I lost a campaign. I got fired as a CEO. These things happen. And when you face that failure, when you face that challenge,
Right.
mentors can be there to help you dust yourself off and get back in
And
the
also
game.
when you fail too, you get hardened.
You get
right?
hardened.
You go, I survived it. I bounced back. Okay, so what's the worst come to worst? I lose this job, I'll get another.
Exactly.
Or, I'll find a way. But until you do that, until you break the glass, you don't know.
That's right.
And that's a lot of time when it comes to parenting, you want to make sure your kids don't feel that. But probably the best thing they could do early is feel that, right?
Toughens them up. That's no doubt about it. You need resilience.
Did you worry about that with your kids, being that you were so financially successful? You could do a lot of things that you weren't able to do as a kid. Do you worry about your kids not being tough enough and resilient enough?
We I think we've had good success with that with our kids because we never.
Did you have to be cognizant of it too?
Absolutely, very aware of it. They had to. The best meritocracy you can find is sports, and when your kids play sports, it doesn't matter how much you want them to succeed. They've got to succeed on their own. So all of our kids, for the most part, played sports, and we try to make sure they earn their way and find mentors. So all my kids in various ways have had mentors. My one daughter now is in particular has a mentorship with someone who's helping her pursue her career. These things make all the difference. We hope that they're as successful as having great mentors as we've been.
So I want to go back to the book, but let's talk about what's happening today. On Wednesday, they call it Liberation Day, where we're going to have reciprocal tariffs with everyone. I mean, things is really unbalanced, like India, 40% tariff on cars coming into India. How's that going to happen? Some of the imbalances with lumber and Canada, but it's all happening at once. Here's what Donald Trump said last night. The audio's not great, but he said on Air Force One, cut one.
The tariffs will be far more generous than those countries were to us, meaning they will be kinder than those countries were to the United States of America over the decades. They ripped us off like no country's ever been ripped off in history. And we're going to be much nicer than they were to us, but it's substantial money for the country, nevertheless.
So how do you see it? I mean, you do have your years of Bridgewater. Yeah. This is what you were doing. You're very tapped into the international business.
Yeah. Well, first, I try to start with, anxiety. Uncertainty is the worst thing you want as a business person. You don't want uncertainty. You want as much certainty as possible so you can make your bets. And the reason the markets are so roiled right now is that there's uncertainty. But when I talk to CEOs, I try to say, well, let's start with the certainty. There's uncertainty, but let's start with the certainty. The certainty is the biggest deregulation in 50 years. The certainty is unlocking energy and energy dominance. The certainty is $2 trillion of new investment in the United States. And the certainty is we're going to get the tax cut extensions made permanent or certainly extended. Those are huge sources of uncertainty. And in that backdrop, there's also the uncertainty of what the tariffs will do. The moment the tariffs come out, then people can start to make decisions on what they're actually going to do. I'm supportive of what the president's trying to do in the following sense. I think reciprocal tariffs that get a fair deal for the American worker, a fair deal for American businesses are absolutely necessary.
Where's the greatest imbalance in Dave McCormick's mind?
I think the greatest imbalance is probably around manufacturing businesses because what happens is they're subsidized in China and other places. They don't actually have the same cost of capital as U.S. companies because they get federal support. The Chinese give them federal support.
And they also don't get paid as much.
So that's in particular where I think we want to bring home that manufacturing. The steel tariffs, the aluminum tariffs are meant to level the playing field. I think that's the area that we have probably the biggest imbalances. The area where I think we have to be careful to make sure we have a capability on our shores, independent of what the other side's doing, is semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. We learned during COVID that we're dependent on other countries for the large majority of semiconductors.
And nothing's been done about it.
Well, nothing's been done yet, but I think you're going to see a lot more under.
And the way you do that is don't say, hey, I command you to come back. What you do is say, make it make financial sense to come back. So if most of our pharmaceuticals are in China, and I think they are, if you say a 25% tariff on everything that comes in, so then that company's got to tell their shareholders that now it's not financially rewarding for us to continue this situation. In theory, they'll bring it back. Now, you tell me the reality. You know these people on these boards. Will they do that?
They will do it. I think they will do it and are starting to do it. I mean, already you've seen a huge movement out of China, but I think you're going to see more and more sourcing.
And China brought that on themselves.
Absolutely. Totally unfair. What President Trump's saying about the post-World War II period, we gave unbelievably favorable terms to Europe and Japan to help them lift their economies after a horrible war that devastated them. But those rules of the road have been in place and stayed in place for 70 years, and they got to change.
So Sean Fain, it's so interesting the way your party is so different now. You have Sean Fain, who's upset that the president got rid of unions for civil rights workers, for civil workers. Anyone working for the federal government was unionized. The president said that's no longer allowed. I'm not sure if that's going to hold up in court. I hope so. But here, Sean Fain is not liking that, but he's loving the fact that we're having these tariffs and telling the car companies, if you make your car outside the country, 25% tariff. Here's what he said is the facts, cut 19.
We've seen over 90,000 manufacturing facilities leave the United States. We've seen, in the big three alone in the last 20 plus years, 65 plants have closed. And so, look, tariffs aren't the total solution. Tariffs are a tool in the toolbox to get these companies to do the right thing, and the intent behind it is to bring jobs back here and invest in the American workers. If they're going to bring jobs back here, they need to be life-sustaining jobs where people can make a good wage, a living wage.
And they would, but the problem is, too, with the union workers, that they also made things hard on their own companies because the job demands that they have made other companies go, listen, we're better off leaving the country without a union or going to the South where there is no union.
Yeah, I think what you saw, the coalition that President Trump won with in Pennsylvania and I won with, was the trade unions were on the rank and file, not at the national level. They were with Harris and Casey, but in the rank and file, they were with President Trump and me, probably 2/3 to 1/3. It was quite remarkable. These are welders and electricians and pipe fitters and steam fitters. And the reason is, the simple reason is, the commitment to jobs. And the commitment to jobs, it comes in lots of forms. It comes in tariffs because it makes a level playing field, but it comes in energy dominance, unlocking energy. It comes in the deregulation agenda. It comes in the support for skilled workers. Not everybody needs to go to college to live the American dream. It's a comprehensive set of things. So I agree with what he just said about tariffs are just one tool in the toolbox.
Right.
There's got to be a commitment to making sure that America, and in my case, Pennsylvania, is a manufacturing powerhouse. Energy is a critical part of that. Skills is a critical part of that. Deregulation is a critical part of that, too.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe that number. 90,000 manufacturing facilities have left since NAFTA.
Well, a lot of these are small mom and pop places that create the jobs. 80% of the jobs come from small businesses.
More with Senator McCormick, whose book is out today, and it is out tomorrow. Who Believed in You? You can download it now. How Purposeful Mentorship Changes the World. Don't move.
By reducing waste and fraud, we'll essentially make the economy more efficient, and we'll shift people resources from the government to the private sector. And that will result in an increase in the output of goods and services. And so the average standard of living will therefore rise.
So that's a little from Elon Musk. He was in Green Bay, Wisconsin, trying to make sure that this judge decision, this judge vote on Tuesday, goes the right direction in his terms, because he believes that they're going to, if the left gets in there, they're going to have the majority in the judiciary in Wisconsin, and they're going to gerrymander at least 3 Republican seats out. It'll probably cost them the majority. That's what's at stake on Tuesday. Senator Dave McCormick knows all about that in Pennsylvania. Senator, your thoughts first about what Musk was saying about what he's trying to do in there. He's cutting out waste and fraud, and he's finding system issues and contracts that are dead, and no accountability about invoices coming in and going out because it's not their money. Yeah. He's changing the whole mindset.
Yeah, no, I think what the president and Elon are doing here is a great service to the American people. But you have to start with the situation. $34 trillion of debt, $1 trillion of interest payments, $2 trillion deficit a year. We bring in $4 trillion in taxes and we spend $6 trillion. You and I could never run our households like this. It got much worse under Biden. We have no choice. We have to rein in the government, rein in the spending. The bureaucracy is out of control. What Doge is doing is it's creating transparency and focus. Transparency on the waste and focus on where to reduce the cost. The Government Accountability Office, which is a bipartisan thing, estimates $500 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse.
What could they do to change the perception of what they're doing? Bret Baier's show, which is on Fox Nation right now, going a long way in doing that. These CEOs like you, very successful in business, trying to help out the government for 6 months.
Yeah,
what could they do to change it?
Well, I think what you just said, it's the more transparency, the more they get out and describe what they're finding and what they're doing, the more you see that these are people that are trying to serve. They're working around the clock to serve the public good,
basically.
right? To serve the public good. Elon Musk is doing this to serve the public good. And I also want to be clear, and they said this, but just two things. One, the person who ultimately is responsible for this is the president and his cabinet. This isn't Elon Musk making a bunch of things. No, he identifies the opportunity, and then the different cabinet secretaries at Interior and Transportation make the decisions. There's clear accountability. Number two, when you make big, bold decisions, there's going to be mistakes. They're acknowledging that. You just have to fix them quickly. And that's the kind of vision that this effort's bringing to them.
I love this book. It's called Who Believed in You? Why do you want people to read it?
I think right now it's overwhelming sometimes. There's so much going on. You feel helpless in terms of making a difference. What this book is telling you is you don't have to be a famous person. You don't have to be a famous media person or a senator to make a difference in the world. You can mentor someone and help them become their best selves.
And we're stuck on the computers these days. You open the book talking about the need to get off the devices, stare people in the eyes, and help them out.
Absolutely. And the question I want everybody who's listening to ask themselves, who believed in you, number one? Did you say thank you to them, number two? Because a lot of people in the book said, oh, I wish I would have told him. And number three, what are you doing to pay it forward by mentoring someone else?
Find somebody else you could help out with, especially in the single-parent era. You got to step in and fill that void. Senator Dave McCormick, congratulations on all your success.
Thank you.
But it wasn't without some trip-ups along the way, but most of the success.
WhoBelievedInYou.com. Thank you.
The notion that we had trading partners where one country might be better than another in certain goods. Remember, we sell a whole lot of military equipment because we do the best on that. Although some of that now is even being rethought as America, it seems to be turning so against our allies. I mean, America first should not mean America alone, and that's where I'm afraid we're headed.
So Senator Mark Warner saying that we can't just tariff things. There's things that America doesn't do well we want other countries to do for us. That's his point, and he sees that the market doesn't like it. With me right now is Charles Gasparino, Fox Business senior correspondent, New York Post columnist, and author of Go Woke, Go Broke. Charles, the market doesn't love it today. They hated it on Friday with the President's Liberation Day on Wednesday. Well, can you bring us inside the numbers? What is Wall Street so worried about?
Well, I mean, Wall Street is obviously worried about the impact of tariffs creating inflation, right? Because it adds to the cost of goods. We're already talking about automobiles going to be $10,000, more expensive. I know people that are going out and buying cars now in anticipation for this because they think they might need a new car in a year. They're saying, I better do it now. I mean, that may spur the economy a little bit, but there is going to be an issue here with inflation, at least in the short term. Then there's a question, does this lead to a recession? Because if you do have dueling tariffs on both of us, we can't export our goods as well as we did in the past. That will cut GDP. And, trade is essentially 25% of our economy. So that's what Wall Street is trying to factor in here, and that's why the markets are all over the place. How do these tariffs impact, at least in the short term, corporate earnings? Because that's how everybody is recalculating corporate earnings. Dan Ives is a very good tech analyst. He covers Tesla. He's recalculating, his price targets on Tesla and all the auto companies because of tariffs. Because the autos are some of the strictest. I want to make one point here, though.
And the goal is to bring everything back. You don't think they're going to respond and bring everything back?
They may. And here's why the Democrats are being very duplicitous about this. To be honest with you, they make it sound like this is a zero-sum game, that we're just like tariffing people for the hell of it. I mean, there are trade relationships that were created. Certain countries don't make better stuff than us. Because of tariffs and trade, and more than just tariffs. Bob Lighthizer was on Tucker recently explaining, unspooling just all the different things they hit you with, right? Because of this unfair trade relationship, Mexico may have a strategic or may have a comparative advantage in making cars than we do. that doesn't mean they make better cars than we do. You see what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
And that's why Warner is full of you-know-what when it comes to this. We have unfair trade relationships across the globe. Now, the real question is, in my view, for Donald Trump and for this administration, you knew that the markets were going to get crazy. You have a lot on your plate. Why did they start with tariffs? Why not start with a budget? Why not keep going at Doge? Why not get tax cuts through and start growing the economy? And then let's take a look at tariffs.
Well, the counter narrative is, well, if you want tariffs, it's going to be 2018, right around the midterms. And that could be the rocking of a midterm that could divide the election, or you wait right past November.
Why can't you do it after 2018?
Well, how about this? Well, that's true.
I mean, 20.
Yeah. Right after the election.
Right after the election. We're getting our dates mixed up.
So it's so interesting, and you must feel the same way, that so many Republican issues are Democrat issues and vice versa. Remember, the Republicans for the longest time were the free traders. Free traders, we don't want anything.
Well, so were Democrats. I mean, I think that the free trade notion, the notion of globalism, has been very much hijacked by the Democratic Party for some. I mean, Barack Obama was a globalist. Let's face it. So was George W. Bush. I mean,
no question.
There was no question about both of them. Trump came in and said, we see what's going on in Middle America. Some of these trade agreements are insane and they're tilted against us. I want to change them. This is where I get, I start, talking out of both sides of my mouth here. It's a little bit. I am a libertarian, conservative, free trader by definition and by instinct. Right. I look at some of these trade agreements and say, what the hell were we thinking?
That's what Trump says.
I know. That's where I agree with him. And, I'm just saying in political terms, you have to play a long game. I mean, what he wants to do, the sort of revamping of American culture and economy is going to take a lot of work, a lot of I don't want to say a bad word. I almost said it, but a lot of fortitude. And, if you want to reverse 4 years of just the most horrible stuff in the world that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris unleashed on this country, culturally and economically, socially, then you got to play a long game and leading with your weakest hand, because everybody knew that if you started doing this tariff stuff, markets would go nuts. The economy in a short term will take a hit. And why he led with that, I can't tell you, other than Brian, he believes tariffs are good.
He does. Well, he keeps saying that. Here's Sean Fain, UAW president, cut 17.
They could shift that work back in very short order and be producing Ram trucks right back there and put those people back to work. They're in a situation where they need to build a new plant. Yeah, that's going to take a couple years, but there is plenty of opportunity for these companies to do the right thing and bring work back here overnight, just as quick as they shipped it out of here.
So that is the UAW president. He's excited about this. He's upset that the president blew up the Civil Workers Union. Yes, he said on an executive order and said, you're no longer in a union. He's mad at that. But he can't believe we have a president right now that wants to bring it right. Was Ross Perot right that NAFTA was going to be a giant sucking sound from the South?
The numbers are all over the place. I could just tell you that.
We like the low prices.
Yeah, we like the low prices. But, we should also like the fact that, there are towns that are built around factories, that people go to work at these factories and their kids have a stable life. I grew up in Westchester County. I had friends of mine who worked at the Tarrytown GM plant. And I can tell you, when that thing closed, just the amount of alcoholism and drug abuse.
Of course.
I knew
their identities tied up in their work.
Guys I grew up with felt like they were making stuff. They didn't go to college for a lot of reasons. They were working class people. And, then their lives were upended. And so are we supposed to say, because of globalism, because we want to make the world richer, we're supposed to get poorer? I mean, it shouldn't be that. Now, that being said, what is the smartest way to go about this, Brian?
So Charlie,
would it be now or wait a little bit?
All at once. You could be saying, we have to redo the USMCA anyway in a year, but I got that. But this is what I think that experts like you have been saying to look out for. A bunch of countries come in and go, hey, 1-800 Donald Trump. Hey, that 40% tax India has on cars? We're dropping it. Hey, Germany calls up. You know what about this? I want BMW still to be sold there. What can I do? So could we be looking at a Jerry Maguire, like phone call after phone call?
Oh yeah,
trying to reconfigure it. And this deadline.
Listen,
could be
how many
getting
times
people on
have
the phone.
I can't remember. There were numerous times during Trump 1 where everybody thought his tariffs were going to destroy the economy. I remember Mark Cuban saying, "Oh, if Trump gets elected, that's it. The markets will go down to zero or whatever. We go into a massive recession." It never happened. We had pretty good growth. We did have tariffs. And the markets, and let's be real clear here what he inherited. He inherited a market that was, I would say, overbought, right? I mean, Joe Biden's economy wasn't great. They were revising the numbers downward on economic growth as in his last quarter. We should also point out that Joe Biden, in order to get elected or try to get Kamala Harris elected, ramped up spending massively, and that was a sugar high that was going to go away. So Trump did inherit issues. This market was poised for something like this if you give it the right trigger, tariffs being the trigger. Now, my point is, again, I would have preferred that he would have waited on tariffs and pushed through massive deregulation, keep doing Doge, tax cuts, and then maybe slowly start implementing tariffs, maybe on something slower that's less dramatic. This sort of dramatic move is freaking out the markets. Now, we should also point out the economy isn't the markets. His voters, the average 401k, I looked this up. Why are Trump voters still engaged with him? I keep getting these emails from my friends at CNBC. Oh, the markets, Trump is toast. I said, what is the average 401k? Well, it's not a CNBC viewer, a rich guy. It's $130,000. That's not a lot of money. If you see your job security and you see inflation being much higher on the economic worry scale than your 401k, and a lot of people do that are in that bracket, that $130,000, that's 401k savings bracket, well, you're not going to be so mad at Donald Trump. And by the way, the average Trump voter is in that bracket. So he looks at this as, politically, astute. I look at it as, well, you probably could have had your cake and eat it too if you would have waited on this thing, because we're going to get, listen, you don't know where I don't think anybody really knows where
tariffs are going. Here's what Kevin Hassett said about something else that you didn't bring up yet, because there's investment coming back here. He's a economic advisor.
No, I know he is.
No, I know, but
smart guy. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Notice how many announcements there have been made about all the investment that's coming to the U.S. Even Hyundai said they're going to build a $10 billion plant this week. And so the point is all that stuff comes to the U.S., then the value of U.S. production has to go up. And so right now, about 15% of GDP is imported, and that's the part of GDP that'll be impacted by our trade policies. And they're basically taking 15% of GDP and onshoring it. Meanwhile, one of the biggest news items that people haven't been talking about is the Big Six, the group of us that are negotiating with Congress the tax bill, have had an enormous amount of positive progress.
So he's, the Oracle, the announcement with Hyundai, the investment from the UAE and Saudi Arabia, I guess if he goes there, $400 billion they're putting in. Is that going to start making some waves?
See, that was the point I was actually going to make. The market is having a debate right now about tariffs. We don't know all the pluses and minuses, and I know you'll put up an economist and say it's horrible. I saw some guy on. I was on one of the shows last week. Jason Furman, he's now at Harvard, talking about Trump, Doge.
Obama guy.
Yeah, Obama guy. This is horrible, blowing up everything. And then you bring up, Bob Lighthizer. Oh no, this is exactly where we're going to go with this. No one really knows. And I think what Hassett is saying is give it some time, because there are positives here. Will the positives outweigh the negatives? We don't know. The markets, though, we should point out, will react on the downside very negatively. They will take downside economic news and factor that in immediately, and more than anything positive. So just remember that. So this is not over yet. This is a debate we're going to be having. And I would tell you, if you're an investor, be prepared. This is going to go on for a while. It's going to go up. There's going to be some downs. And at some point, my guess is it all comes down to corporate earnings. And our corporate earnings impacted that much from tariffs? We don't know.
Right. Last question. The Doge, did you see the Brett Baer's interview with the Doge guys?
Yes. Yeah, I saw some of it. And
So impressive how systems and just getting computers to talk to each other and modernizing and using AI to push things forward without firing. Everyone's focused on the firing people, and that's fine. But only 0.05% have been let go. Most of these states are scooping these people up anywhere, giving them great offers. So I was very impressed with these guys who are donating their time to fix something they see fundamentally wrong, but ultimately fixable.
By the way, I don't know how anybody, I don't care how committed of a liberal you are. Again, Jason Furman, I heard him talk about people weren't going to get their Social Security checks. I was like, is this guy out of his mind? That's never going to happen.
So irresponsible.
It's so stupid.
It scares people.
But it's stupid. People going to get their Social Security checks. We are talking about, for years, liberals, progressives, I know them, some of them are my friends, would say, we're actually fiscal conservatives in the fact that we're going to make government more efficient to deliver welfare checks, Social Security, you name it, to the people. And you know what they did? They did just the opposite. They grew it to an extent that it missed its central mission, which was to serve the people. And that's why you get USAID, whatever it's called, funding transgender dance festivals in Bangladesh. To me, what they're doing is God's work. I don't know how anybody can be against it. And,
when you see it, we had to see it. And I think we saw it.
Well,
and that's my hope is more people see it. And they just go, criticize these bunch. The guy who came up with Airbnb. He's like, my goodness, he's a multi-billionaire.
Right.
Do you think he's doing this for the glory?
And that's the
to
other
work
thing.
on Saturday and Sunday?
Look at how much time Elon is putting into this stuff.
Crazy.
And he's taking it. I mean, listen, if I were a shareholder of Tesla, I'd be really annoyed because I want him back in the office. But he's a patriot. He wants to do the right thing, and he is doing God's work. Brian,
Absolutely.
you cannot have. We cannot be running. We cannot have that type of waste. And a lot of people say it's chicken feed, right? It's just little. We're talking about billions when we're talking about trillions of debt. Yeah, but you got to start somewhere.
I know.
And if it's so bad here, like again, transgender dance festivals that your mom's paycheck is financing. If it's so bad here, how much waste and abuse is there in Medicaid? How much waste and abuse in Medicare?
Exactly. We're not
Social Security.
But see, then we'll get a message. He's cutting. It's not cutting Medicaid and Medicare.
No.
He's leaning it out to find where the fraud is. And that's it. And that's just, I think it's important. I think more people just have to watch it. And then you walk away going, okay, I see what they're doing here. Charlie, thanks so much. When can we see you again? You're everywhere.
I'll be I think I got a packed schedule today, but the market's going nuts.
Of course. You're going to be really busy. And always goes, pick up his book. He was ahead of his time. Go Woke, Go Broke. He wrote that before the election. Charlie, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The fact that we have a second aircraft carrier that's moving to CENTCOM is certainly a sign that this administration is very serious about this requirement. The fact we're moving B-2s into the region similarly signals that. But I believe, again, for the first time, we're coupling the genuine political will to act along with military capability. So it's a unique moment in the theater, and I'm glad to see that this administration is grasping that opportunity.
I like that General McKenzie finally talking military. I know all about the signal thing, and I played it a half hour ago. But General McKenzie, obviously, he served as, I don't know what prestigious position he had, but he was part of the Afghanistan debacle. And it was also made clear, if you look at the testimony and who wants to go back there, that was Joe Biden's decision. They implemented it, all fell apart. And then he had to try to go fix it at the last minute, and he tried to do the best he could. I'm not making excuses for him. I personally would have, if him and Millie threw their stars down on the table and said, if you leave the way you're leaving, you can do without me, Biden wouldn't have done it because he would have realized what a catastrophe it would be for Milley to leave. But McKenzie's been very honest since. And as a military analyst, he's pretty strong in respecting the military community. That's the way I understand it. And when he came out and would blow off take a pot shot at irresponsible Donald Trump and his team and instead talk about the merit in the operation, and they got rid of 53 terrorists. Yeah, there might have been some ancillary damage. That's what happens when you're a Houthi rebel and you spend all your time rocketing innocent people and shutting down waterways. Some innocent people will die. So McKenzie coming out doing that was kind of heartening. Hey, make sure you watch Fox and Friends tomorrow between 6 and 9. Always check out One Nation Sunday at 10. And I hope to meet you all in person June 21st. in Dayton, Ohio. History, Liberty, and Laughs. The Fox Nation co-sponsors it, and it's always great. Thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, stay within yourself.